So thanks, Peter, for joining us. We're obviously discussing the case of the death of your father, who was 87-year-old. He was 87 years old when he died. And this weekend in the Sunday World, we published some pictures of the injuries that were sustained on his body. And sometimes they say pictures tell 1,000 words, and you can really see why you and your family believe that this is not a man that died of natural causes. Now, Peter, can you take us back really to what happened on the night your father was found dead?
So I can tell you that the information we know, or we feel comfortable we know, on that particular night, the alarm was set on my father's house approximately 10 minutes to 9. We don't know who set the alarm.
Yeah.
We assume it was our father. He walked down 300 metres to the local pub.
And he's living in Roscommon
in County Leitrim, Ruski, which is on it's in 2 counties.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my father's on the Leitrim side. And he goes into that pub and he spends about an hour, I believe about an hour to an hour and a half. Some people say he got there at 9 o'clock, which would be standard if the alarm was set at 10 to 9. And others say he arrived at 9:30. He was accompanied later by a man in a 3-piece suit wearing a hat. After that conversation, the witness was observing my father, a woman, and she just got a bad vibe, followed my father out of the pub, and where he went into the Weir Lodge pub next door. That would be usual. But she was just a little apprehensive about this other guy. He left that pub, the second pub, approximately 12:10, 12:15, and he walked home. He passed a taxi driver, and that's the last known sighting of my father alive. They acknowledged each other, and he made his way towards his home.
So your father was 87, which is a good age, but
yeah,
all of, a very, very healthy man nonetheless.
Yeah.
Obviously able to get up and down, make that walk, no problem. There wasn't any background of particular health struggles or anything of that type. So, Peter, then obviously the next thing is your father ultimately is found dead at the property. How was the alert raised?
So my sister Anne, who lives in Longford, about 10 miles away, would come out usually on a Sunday to visit my father, and she would bring out scraps for the dog, which is what she did. My father's dog, Marley. And upon coming up to the house, the first thing she noticed was that the front light was on at the front porch of the house. It turns out there was 7 lights left on from the back of the house to the front that night when my father went down to the pub, which was very unusual. Old people don't waste electricity, and he certainly would have been one of those. He normally would leave one light on. But anyway, she comes around the corner and she finds him. And she called her husband. She called Brendan, my brother, and obviously she was in a state. It's a traumatic event. And I don't think Anne knew whether he was alive or dead, to be honest with you. But my sister-in-law, Bernie, my brother's wife, Bernie arrived second, and then a few minutes later, Brendan arrived. So they arrived before the ambulance hadn't come at this stage, nor the Gardaí. Bernie called me on the phone at 4 o'clock Irish time, and she was trying to explain to me that something had happened, but she was trying to explain to me that there was something not right. It wasn't just that my father was
Yeah, so obviously a man of that age could collapse and die.
Yeah, sure.
Tragically, and these things do happen, but there was reasons straight away. There was suspicions that this was a much more complex story than just a tragic a man passing of natural causes. What was like, because it was instant that, because basically you saw unusual signs on your father's body.
So Brendan went into great detail, all right, and Bernie and Anne all said the same thing afterwards. I got home the following day. They all said it was staged. There's no question it was staged, and they were all in unison about that. But there were several injuries to his body, and I remember Brendan telling me at one point, Brendan was performing CPR on my father, and at one point he's looking around and he sees all these items around the body that just didn't seem right relative to the injuries on my father. For example, the injuries were quite, as Brendan and Bernie both said, if they didn't know whose house they were at, they wouldn't have known who they were looking at. But yet my father's shoes and socks were placed below his feet, approximately 18 inches. As Brendan put it quite neatly, a shoe and a sock, a shoe and a sock. So he was barefooted, his toe was bleeding. But he said then that his tie was taken off over his head, bloodied, but still in a loop, which my father would never do. And he says it was placed to one side, but then my father's collar was just perfect. So, perfectly down. And then he looked over to, I suppose, the right-hand side of my father, and he noticed my father's watch. His watch, which had, one of those accordion bangles, we'll call it. It's metal, but you'd slip it over your hand,
I do, to expand it, yeah.
Yeah, and that was broken. When we studied the photographs afterwards, it was broken in two places, not one. But it was parallel. Both pieces are parallel to each other, like two neat. So, and I think he had a black eye. And he had multiple facial injuries, and his hands were like boxing gloves. They were swollen. His fingers were swollen, and he had cuts. And we seen them on the primetime documentary. There are photographs that are much more graphic than what was on primetime, but obviously they couldn't be shown. So there was a general sense that something is not right here, which is.
Yeah,
extraordinary.
And there's an obvious reason for why you would believe that. So you must have been very surprised then when, as the guards obviously came out and presumably the medical experts, and are they straight away telling you that they believe this is caused by a death of natural causes, and are they offering you an explanation for all of these unusual things, including the wounds and the appearance of clothes removed, etc.?
Yeah, so I guess obviously there wasn't a forensic pathologist called. The body was moved by the ambulance paramedics to the ambulance from where it was found, and they tried to save him for 34 minutes. So by the time the police came, the Gardaí came, he wasn't in situ. He was in the ambulance.
Yeah.
So, but they did, I guess the next morning, they had the hospital pathologist, and he did the autopsy, unbeknownst that it came from a crime scene. And he says himself in the inquest, had I known that, I wouldn't have done the autopsy because I'm not qualified to do it.
Yeah, could you explain that a bit, Peter? Just what would be the difference? Like,
when a body comes apparently from a designated crime scene, which it was designated crime scene at 5:25 p.m. the evening before. And so when the body left, which it left at about 7:40 p.m., and it was brought down to Sligo, there was a guard minding the body all night. But for some reason, there seemed to be a miscommunication between the Gardaí and either the coroner or the pathologist. But the pathologist, according to his testimony at the inquest, did not receive information that would lead him to believe this came from a crime scene. So he's thinking, this is just a regular death. But when he was questioned about the injuries at the inquest, he did say, well, my job was just to find out the cause of death. Yes. I'm not looking this as suspicious at all.
No, so he's presumably looking for maybe heart failure or things like absolutely. That. But he's not looking at he's not taking into account, for example, how a wound could be sustained or he's certainly not looking at it through this prism of has something occurred. So so he comes up with these results. And what are the explanation that he has given for your father's death?
So he was saying basically, a massive heart attack.
Yeah.
Okay, one in which he would have died pretty much straight away, which is what we obviously believed. If that's what he's saying, we have no reason. Well, we have questions, obviously, but we're like, okay. So we always thought that he must have died straight away. We had no idea that he had survived for 15 hours, and so that's pretty much what he said. Now, when he was questioned about the injuries, he said, well, he says he could have had a farming accident 2 days prior, which we found out like, wow. I mean, that's, as the man said to me, it's like a school teacher with the child comes in Monday morning, and the school teacher is supposed to teach that child English, and the child comes in and he's battered from head to toe. I mean, there's an obligation upon the teacher to ask some questions, and I suppose that's the way we kind of look at it. You know, we were disappointed, obviously, but
and obviously people had seen your father that evening earlier on, where there was no, his hands weren't swollen or anything of the sort.
Not at all. No.
So, what you're left at that moment, Peter? You know, your father is a man who's very popular in the local community, much loved. From by all accounts, a very well regarded man. But is there anything that starts to spring to mind as a possible motive for why somebody would inflict violence on him?
Yeah, so we've obviously had 5 years and 8 months to mull this over in our minds, you know, and we kind of ruled out a few things. One of them being robbery. Yes, his wallet was taken, okay, but there was also 20 euros left at the scene, and then a broken fiver, torn fiver. We never found the other half of that fiver. But if they wanted to rob him, and wouldn't be that difficult. He's 87. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
But wouldn't you think a reasonable person, I think, would think, well, there'll be more money in the house, and you would ransack the house. So, not to say there wasn't people in the house, but the house wasn't ransacked. So we kind of thought that doesn't seem reasonable. And not only that, if you did rob him, and let's say in the process of that, he did take a heart attack, well, you're not going to stage the body. Why would you want to get out of Dodge? Do you know, it just doesn't make any sense. So the most logical explanation we don't obviously think at the same time that it was just a opportunistic crime. There was people across the road, neighbours. There's a house next door, my own house, and my daughter had lived there for quite a while. You know, they would have heard, if there was somebody living in the house at that time, they would have heard noise. So we're thinking it's more likely than not that this was for the purposes of intimidation. The injuries sustained on him seem to be sustained over some period of time. So we're thinking that it was more likely than not it was intimidation, extortion,
because
for money.
Yes, because he had, or the rumor, the local rumor was that your father had come into a lot of money as a result of an inheritance, which was in classic Irish style, overinflated anyway. But that was
yeah, unfortunately, and that's he had a cousin that died in 2010, and he had no children, no immediate family, and my father and brother were the only two heirs. And of course, everybody put it together. Do you know, a lot of people would, and not faulting them. But we weren't aware that people thought this. It's only the last few years it kind of came to light. But he had given off hundreds of thousands to the church, to hospitals, to charities, and my father was left with 50,000. My father he didn't care about money. Do you know what I mean? That's not, or his brother for that matter. I mean, that's not what they'd be interested in or do that. No. But they were left. I think my father was left. I think 50,000 is what he was left.
But his cousin's estate had been worth a couple of million, or that's the rumor that had gone around.
Well, it was sold at the height of the property boom.
Yeah,
right. That's when it was sold. So yeah, that's how you got that 2 million for 3 acres of land.
Yeah,
pretty wild. But we do believe, okay, that there may well have been people involved in gambling, Okay, now my father would never gamble. We believe there's people involved in gambling that ran up debts they could not pay back. And we believe those debts were owed to nefarious people. And they came looking for their money. And we think that they tried to extort my father for money. And I think ultimately that's what led to his demise.
So, Peter, you're piecing this together in the aftermath. I mean, the explanation given, of course, for the stage scene seems very unusual in that obviously his items of clothing have been removed and placed beside his body. I mean, how is that explained if it's not the presence of another person?
So it seems to us, and that was something I forgot to mention, that his overcoat and blazer were taken off him. And as Brendan says, rolled up and placed underneath each side. Brendan thought that could be to comfort my father. It could be, yeah, or it could be just to stage it and to let on, perhaps that my father was thinking he was outside and thinking he was inside and going to bed and going to sleep. And that was the excuse that was given to us by the Gardaí, where they said that he would have had perhaps hypothermia, he took off his own clothes, and that he thought he was going to bed, and he did all of this himself.
I mean, there's a lot of presumptions there, isn't there, that a man suffers a heart attack, and despite that, an elderly man, that he sort of carefully disrobes himself, and there's a lot of 2 + 2 equaling a certain number, isn't there?
There's more evidence. I would argue there's more evidence to suggest there was third-party involvement than to suggest that my father had hypothermia, had taken off his own clothes, or the dog did it, or even that bucket with the blood in it and the blood-soaked towel beside it. It's impossible for them to explain it. They cannot explain it. And then, of course, we had the timber that's found beside the body that's blood-soaked.
Yeah.
That was shown in the documentary on primetime as well. One thing they didn't mention, I don't think, on the documentary was the blood-soaked towel that's behind. It's like a small bathroom towel that's behind the bucket with the blood in it. That towel, the Gardaí admitted when we met with the Commissioner Drew Harris in Dublin, they admitted that towel is now missing. It was never put into evidence. And they had no explanation for how it went missing. But it went missing while it was a designated crime scene and under the control of An Garda Síochána.
Yeah.
I couldn't understand that.
Peter, in the aftermath of his death, and the state, have come up with these conclusions, what sort of position are your family in then? Because it's very difficult to if the analogy would be an oil tanker going in one direction, with the state has made a decision, it's very hard to get the oil tanker moving. What have you had to do, and how what's that struggle been like?
Well, I mean, it's obviously an ongoing struggle, but I can tell you this. When the theory they're coming out with, and we're being asked to accept it as a possibility, that my father's dog, Marley, was responsible for taking off his clothes, that tells us that the authorities have a huge problem on their hands. If that's the route they're going down, it's incredible to come out with something like that. It's insulting to the intelligence of us as a family and to the whole country. When I believe that they tell us that they've done a full investigation, it's very clear they didn't do a full investigation. The man in that pub, the man with the hat, there was a hat found at the back of the house, and it was seen and described. And he described the location it was relative to Daddy's body, and that was the first paramedic on the scene. That hat was never, like the towel, was never brought into evidence, and the hat also disappeared while it's under the Garda. They're preserving it because it's a crime scene. Now, how do we know that? Well, the hat was seen at 4:00. And at 27 minutes past 8:00, that hat was not at the scene.
Yeah.
Because we have the pictures. So, obviously, there's a lot of people talking about, there's two things. people say that they got from the documentary on TV. And this is people sending it to us. Number one, they believe that your father was definitely assaulted. It's very clear. And number two, in their words, they're saying that rather than this being negligence, that there's something more to this, which brings a very ominous dark cloud around it if that's the case, because there would have to be a really good reason, for stuff going missing. Now, interestingly enough, the man with the hat, he was named in a statement over 4 years ago. He was never interviewed, according to the Gardaí.
There was a review of the initial investigation carried out by the Gardaí, but you feel that hasn't been sufficient. Tell us what that review involved and what you would like to see happen, I suppose.
So the review is a thing, I guess, that the Gardaí are going to do, and it's an internal investigation into their own conduct.
Yeah.
And so, I'm not. That cannot be an independent review if that's the case. It's still internal. So they did the review. There are 23 recommendations. Funny enough, there was no mention about the mistake that was made regarding a forensic pathologist not being brought in. That was never mentioned. There was several other things not mentioned. Why the guy with the hat was not interviewed when they knew his name, knew where he lived. He wasn't interviewed. Now, that is one of the recommendations, so they are to interview him. And then the original senior guard, the superintendent that was in charge of this, of course, for the first 6 months or 5 months, he is to be interviewed as well. Funny enough, at the inquest, there were 3 people that we thought would have been there. One was the superintendent in charge, and one was the coroner. He had retired. So had the superintendent. And then the guy who took the photographs, he retired as well. So we were missing 3 key people who could have filled in the blanks for us. And they weren't available or weren't asked to be present at the inquest, which we thought was, boy, I'm gone a long time. I mean, I don't know how things work in Ireland, but
yeah, because you're of course you're gone to the US. Are you in the US now, Peter?
I am. Yeah. I'm out in Texas for the last 34 years.
Right. So you're having to come back and help your family deal with this as well.
Oh, I'll be coming back next week, I think it is, or the week after next. In the next few weeks, we're supposed to have a meeting with the Justice Minister.
Yeah.
There's nothing that's set in stone yet, but that'll be my 16th trip back in 5.5 years.
So, what would you like to happen now, Peter? Given where we are now, what would you like to see the guards and the state? How would you like to see them take this on?
Well, I definitely think the position of the commissioner, Drew Harris, the previous commissioner, when we met him, was I have been informed brought up to date on the case, and there is nothing suspicious about the death of Liam Farrell. Period.
Yeah.
Given the information now that's out there, I mean, that's an untenable position in our view. I don't see how the Garda Síochána can say that a full investigation took place and there's nothing suspicious about the death. That's untenable. We want a forensic pathology to be carried out. It was denied our father at the beginning. For whatever reason, we're not quite sure, but the fact of the matter is it was denied to him. We believe that's the only definitive way to find out what other injuries are on him. Because he has, we have a picture of a collarbone that's sticking up, like protruding through his skin, where the collarbone meets the sternum. That's one of the things. Linda Mulligan referred to several possible injuries, including a base of skull fracture, based on the bilateral injuries to his eyes. And she said that there was matted blood found at the back of Liam Farrell's head. But she said that the original hospital pathologist noted that his scalp was grossly unremarkable. So she says one couldn't rule out foul play based upon the photographs and the original hospital pathology. Foul play could not be ruled out. Yeah. So that's just another reason why we think we need a forensic pathology, and we need We do need a serious crimes unit out of Dublin. We need to get out of the Sligo Leitrim division, and we need to be out of the Northwest region, which encompasses a lot of the West, because that's where the review recommendations came from. And if you're going to put in there the possibility that a dog, a Labrador dog, could have taken off my father's clothes, I'm sorry, you've lost a lot of credibility, not just with us, but with most people in Ireland.
Now, in the interest of balance, Peter, I'm just going to read out the statement the guards gave us, and then we might just finish with you reading out the plaque that is on your father's land. So in a statement to the Sunday World, the guards said the investigation into Liam Farrell's death was referred for peer review, and Garda Síochána carried out a full investigation into the death of Mr. Farrell on the evening of the 12th of January 2020, and a Garda investigation file was submitted to the DPP. No prosecution was directed. And following the coroner's court verdict, the Garda commissioner confirmed that Garda Síochána will carry out a peer review of the original investigation. They describe how that involved a senior investigating officer from an external division carrying it out. In general, such peer reviews contain recommendations. In this case, the peer review process has concluded and his recommendations have been supplied to the investigation team who are actioning them. That's basically describing what you've already said. However, it's a stark contrast to the plaque you've placed on the location where your father was dead. Do you remember the words of that, Peter, off the top of your head?
I don't, but I can go get the newspaper if you can give me a moment.
Well, maybe I'll read them out for you while I have them here, because that's fine. This is a basically a gravestone, really. That's been placed where your father is dead, and it says on January the 12th, 2020, the same day referred to the guards, our beloved 87-year-old father, Liam Farrell, left the Weir Lodge pub beside the bridge in Rooskey to return to his home of 75 years, a mere 300 metres away. Upon his return, Liam was brutally attacked behind his house and in the hay shed, where he was tied up with a rope and severely beaten. He was subsequently dragged from the hay shed to the back door of the house, as we have been told, and evidenced by the injuries to his body per the report of a forensic pathologist. Our father lay dying outside the back door in the coldest of winter conditions before finally passing away some 15 hours later. We believe our father was betrayed by persons close to him and continues to be by the deafening silence of those who know the truth. And it ends then with an appeal for anybody to contact the Garda confidential line. And I presume, Peter, you still want anybody who might have any knowledge to follow through and to contact Gardaí. Absolutely.
Any information they have, contact the 1-800 number, the confidential line. Your call is logged in there. It doesn't go missing. It's in the system. It's very important that anybody that has any information.
Yeah. Because even the smallest bit can really unlock these things at times.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, Peter, thanks for talking to us, and the next time you're back in Ireland, if there's a further update, we'll try and keep following the story for people to see how it can be pushed forward.
Thanks very much, Niall. I appreciate it.
Great talking to you. Thank you.
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.